What's up, everyone? Thank you so much for tuning into a new episode of Becoming Ourselves, a work in progress podcast. As you know, I am Joel Sigrist, and I'm joined here by my co-host and dear brother,
Jesse Sigrist. Thank you all for listening.
Nice for picking up that cue. We didn't really talk about that beforehand. Today's episode is really quite a fun one. I really enjoyed doing this episode. We recorded it yesterday with Devin Barbin. Devin is from Morning Brew. She's a community manager there. She also is someone that has become a close friend of mine and someone that I have really enjoyed getting to know over the last couple of years. And really the last 6 months as I was in the Morning Brew Business Analytics Accelerator program through Morning Brew Learning.
That kind of ties in with the themes of this episode. We talked about how to make friends, specifically in the post-college sphere where friends aren't really made for you. And Devin, working in community building, has a lot of good insight, both research back and then her experiential way of making friends as well, and had some really applicable advice for how to make friends and how to build community.
Some very practical thoughts and advice in this one, which is really cool, and it's fun to listen to. And Devin is someone that has a lot of friends, and so, or at least appears to have a lot of friends, and it's cool to hear her talk about it a little bit in this episode. So we touch on that. We touch on plugging into a community. We touch on a couple of other things like pickleball. This really is quite a fun episode, and I do think you'll enjoy it. The other exciting thing that we're doing with this episode is, Jesse, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, we're planning on doing a book giveaway. So Devin talks about this book, Unreasonable Hospitality, which is a really impactful book for her. And we thought, what better way to promote that and promote this podcast than to do a giveaway? So if you text us at 503 293 2664.
No. 503 2664. Jesse, we are so close. You're so close.
503-893-2664.
Yes.
We will enter you in a drawing. You'll be one of the few who responds. Good odds.
That's right.
And yeah, you will get a free copy of the Unreasonable Hospitality book.
Yep.
Courtesy
All we
of
need
us.
is, courtesy of Becoming Ourselves. So just text your name to the podcast, or text, even better, text a screenshot showing that you follow us somewhere, and then we'll give you 2 entries instead of just 1. So a little way to boost your odds there.
3 entries if you give us a podcast idea, guest idea, or just a piece of feedback for what's your favorite episode so far.
Text us a screenshot of you following the show for 2 entries. Text us your name for 1 entry, or text us a piece of feedback or an idea for a future show or a podcast guest or a topic that you want to hear from on this show. And that will give you 3 entries into this drawing. So we'll announce this 2 weeks from today. So this episode is going live July 3rd. So we'll announce it on July 17th. We'll have an episode live and we'll announce it, and we'll get the book shipped to you. So we'll figure out all the details of your mailing address and all that stuff later on. But in the meantime, take a listen to this episode, listen to Devin talk about unreasonable hospitality, making friends as an adult, and pickleball, and enjoy the show. Devin, thanks for coming on. How cool.
Of course. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we are happy to have you. Devin Barbin is a community manager at Morning Brew, one of the most innovative companies in business news, including more than 6 million subscribers across more than 9 different daily newsletters and 4 different podcasts, as well as having 3,000 alumni in Devin's department of Morning Brew Learning, of which I am one of those alumni, which is how Devin and I know each other. Devin facilitates these business education without the BS programs to accelerate business professionals in business essentials, leadership, business analytics, and also talking about hard conversations at work, dealing with conflict, and so many other relevant topics that are not as accessible to find good information on in the real world post-college. And Morning Brew Learning is, in my experience, one of the best ways to get that information. Normally, Devin is on the other side of interviews. She has hosted interviews with Will Guidara, Michelin star restaurateur and best-selling author of Unreasonable Hospitality, and Dr. Meg Jay, the author of The Defining Decade, Why Your 20s Matter and How to Make the Most of Them, as well as many others. And I'm pretty sure I have The Defining Decade on this bookshelf back here too. I know it was given to me by Kyle Hagge, and I read it last summer. I think it was a fun read. But Devin, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me and for the great introduction. I am excited to be here with an Morning Brew Learning alum, so it's a pleasure. And Jesse as well.
Hey, I get the morning brew for finance every morning in my email box. So I am not quite as plugged in as Joel, but more than zero, right? I saw an interesting tidbit today that I don't want to butcher it, but it's like some company did a study on why hospital rates are higher right now, like this year, and it's from like seniors playing pickleball.
I can see that.
I saw
pickleball is having a moment.
yeah. Which go pickleball.
Man, my company's Slack was talking about that so much today because we've got like a couple of people that play a lot of pickleball, and they were like, "What on earth?"
It's a whole
it's like
craze.
knee and hip injuries or something.
Yeah, because it is approachable, a very approachable sport. So people of all ages can play that maybe haven't played a sport in a while and aren't used to that kind of like field of motion. So it's very interesting. But pickleball is great. I live in New York, and they are opening I think it's like one of the biggest outdoor pickleball facilities in Central Park this summer. Wow. So it is taking off. That is for sure.
It is having a moment. I think, and I, again, don't want to butcher this, I think it was started outside Seattle, right near where Joel and I are from.
Pickleball?
Yeah, if you read the Wikipedia page, and if that's wrong, we can take this out. But I'm pretty sure it's like Whidbey Island. Yeah, I don't know.
Whoa. So, Jesse, have you read the Pickleball Wikipedia page?
That's maybe irrelevant. I don't know. I don't remember where I learned that. I just I heard it on like a show somewhere, and then I fact checked it, and Wikipedia, obviously the best source to fact check things.
It is.
Anyway,
I trust Wikipedia with my life, so I've donated to Wikipedia. Jesse and I were talking about that the other day. I don't know why I did that, but I don't know. The largest source of free information in the world, and I paid for it, but that's okay. Okay, so I would love to talk about pickleball forever, but we do have some things that are not as pickleball related. Although, Devin, you want to say anything about pickleball? You a big pickleball player that we don't know
I
about?
did prepare to talk about pickleball for an hour, so I don't know what's coming next with not pickleball, but
that's great. That out of your bio.
I love it. Okay, so Devin, one of the things that I have always admired about you and about Morning Brew Learning is this idea of weak ties. That's something that Meg Jay talks about a lot in The Defining Decade. And weak ties are a very cool idea. I'm not going to define them. Can you talk about weak ties for a minute? And then I've got some follow-up questions about it.
I would love to talk about weak ties. Dr. Meg Jay talks a lot about them, and as do a few other people. And there are lots of studies and research around this. Essentially, a weak tie is someone that you want to have access to in your normal day-to-day job or geography or life. And it doesn't necessarily mean that that relationship is weak, but that it is someone that isn't in your most direct network. So a couple of fun examples around it. There's this theory game, whatever you want to call it, called the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, or the Oracle of Bacon, I think some people call it.
I love that.
It is quite fascinating. You can look it up. And it's this idea that essentially you can take any actor, any major actor, and through shared cinematic appearances of other actors that they've been in movies with, connect them to Kevin Bacon within 6 steps or less. And it's a whole parlor game, and the point is to try to see what path is the shortest to get to Kevin Bacon from any given actor. And aside from Kevin Bacon, it actually has real world applicability in that it's evidence of this broader theory called the 6 degrees of separation in general, in which the idea is that pretty much anyone is connected to any other person in 6 connections or less. There was another study done, and I will butcher this if I try to describe it too in depth because I learned about it years ago, but it was basically a project in which they took a group of people and started with a group of like the A group. And the goal was to get all of these packages that they assigned to these people to a Z group, so the end group. And they gave them vague information about the type of person it was and the geography they were in, and basically said, send this to the person that you think is most likely to know this person or this type of person. And then they saw what happened and actually how the packages ended up, even though the first person and the last person were completely unconnected to each other, in such few steps were able to end in their actual destination. And so it's just this really fascinating, I think, evidence in both instances that people are much more connected than we realize. And our networks ourselves that we have are pretty limited. We tend to be in groups in which we know the same people, operate in the same social circles, whether that's professional or personal. And I think that Weak Ties, what they do is give you access to people and knowledge and ideas that you wouldn't otherwise have. And then through that, your second and third and fourth degree connections then become so much wider and so much more broad and diverse, because all of those people have access to resources and people and knowledge that you don't have as well. So really the idea is that most opportunities and a lot of connections that end up leading to jobs or to friendships or things like that often come from weak ties because of that. And so there's this really great benefit of fostering weak ties and looking for weak ties and investing in them and trying to have a broader network of weak ties.
I love that. And it's exponential too, right? Because like if I know, Dunbar's number, 150 people, right? Each one of them knows 150 people who knows 150 people, that it's not just this, like, it's not adding, it's what is that, multiplying? It's exponential. That's it's the exponential curve.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's access to things that you wouldn't normally be able to break into, I think, otherwise. Like when you think about the way that it can be most beneficial is if you're trying to get into an industry or move to a new place or whatever it may be that you don't really have any direct experience or direct contacts for, that's when it becomes really powerful because, like you said, it does have this exponential growth factor in a way in which the people that are connected to you in your most close friend circles or professional circles and jobs are probably going to have that same knowledge that you have to a certain extent. And so being able to tap into the wider circles and people's expanded networks is what's really probably going to be the connection, the one thing that changes the trajectory in the way that you might be looking for if you have a specific goal or outcome in that way.
That's really interesting. Yeah, it feels kind of like that. Yeah, the cliche. It's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And then like the expansion is like, and you kind of know or are connected to a lot more people than intuitively it feels like. And so it almost feels like a cheat code for for networking, for professional development, and for personal development. It's like I'm really actually only a couple of phone calls away from most people that I need to be in contact with.
Yeah.
100%.
And I think Jesse, it reminds me too of like Devin, when we brought in Zach Walker, who like is another Morning Brew alum.
Yes,
we brought him onto
Zach.
the show. We love Zach. Zach is a great guy. When we brought him on, was that a month or so ago? A couple of months ago, we published him. He was one of our earlier episodes. And as if we've been doing hundreds. Devin, you're like our 15th episode. These all are still
graduation for me. So
he was.
Oh, I know.
He was. Yeah.
200th choice.
No, Devin, you were on the short list. We're still working through our top candidates, but but when we had Zach on, he talked about one of the things that he prioritizes a lot is when he first starts a new job, getting to know everyone there and talking to everyone and leading with the question of, what can I do to help? How can I be a friend to you? How can I support you? And that sometimes people have really good answers and sometimes people have specific things that they're looking for that he can help with. And a lot of times people don't have specific answers, but it establishes Zach as someone that is friendly and someone that wants to be helpful, so that then when people are trying to look at weak ties later on and trying to leverage that Zach is someone that comes up and comes to mind because he is such a welcoming face that truly is rooting for everyone he knows and wants to be a value add in all of those contexts.
I love that.
I don't know where I was going with that,
Shout
but
out to Zach. No, it's great. I think it hits on
yes.
actually two really important points. And yeah, shout out to Zach. He's an all-star. I think that two important things that I would kind of retweet from Zach's story there is that I think there's a critical window of when you're new somewhere that's really important and really powerful, in which you can ask anyone for anything and they're so much more willing and open to helping you, because that is the intended, time in which in a new job you're trying to learn, you're trying to absorb as much as possible. I think that's excellent advice. Take advantage of that time period to really have a coffee chat with as many people as you can. My another guest of yours, to really just have the Becoming Ourselves community here connected. Cal Haggy, my manager, set up when I first started at Morning Brew coffee chats with people across the company. For me, that was my first week was literally my full schedule was just coffee chats with people. And I think there's a really powerful opportunity to kind of take a critical window in which you're new somewhere to just learn from other people. And I think that is really just solid advice and something I've seen be really impactful in my own career. And then the other thing that you mentioned is that people then remembered Zach later down the line as someone. And I think that is investing in a weak tie. It's more of a long-term project. It's the impact might not be immediately evident, but the seeds may be sown for something to be reaped in the future. You're going to be top of mind as someone who maybe spoke about a specific thing or offered a specific type of help. And that tends to come up later down the line, not as immediately. So I think knowing that even if it doesn't feel like those things are impactful in the moment, it tends to be impactful in the long term.
Yeah. 100%. And you sow the seeds that you've planted, right? It's you get out what you get back what you've put out, right? That it is this lagging effect that several years ago, I listened to this talk by Jeff Bezos where he talked about, it was 2016, 2017. I was first starting to learn about business concepts at, freshman, sophomore year of college. And he talked about we as Amazon had a really good Q3. That didn't happen in Q3. That happened in Q1 and Q4 of last year and Q3 of last year, that we were setting things in place, we were setting things in motion, and we're just now seeing the results of them. And so we are getting that lagging results, that lagging measure. And I think this is, not as capitalistic, not as kind of race to the bottom sort of an idea, but it is a similar idea. It is, you get out that lagging measure later where you reap what you sow.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's just a really good, I like that start to this episode, and a really good place to start. To pivot a little bit, how would you say, Devin, you stay engaged with people that you want to facilitate these relationships with? So maybe you've started out the weak tie, but how do you make it something a little bit more lasting and stay in contact with them?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it's something that I'm continuously learning about still. But I think that first, kind of in the formation of weak ties and fostering them, I see it kind of in these three stages or categories. The first being getting out of your silos. So the willingness to be able to join a new class or go to a group book club that you wouldn't normally go to, or say yes to your friend that wants you to go to some talk that you wouldn't normally be interested in. But getting out of your silos to be able to find people that are outside of the realm of your spheres already and circles already is, I think, kind of one of the critical steps there. Then I think the next thing is contributing to the commons. So the way that I kind of think about that and define that is being generous with your resources, your network, your knowledge, and knowing that it's not the only reason that you want to give those things, certainly, but one of the benefits of being generous with those things is that it does tend to come back to you. And the more generous you are with people and the more open and supportive you are with offering your own network, your own resources, your own knowledge, I think the more that tends to come back to you as well. And so that element, and then I think really defining your why and how for connecting with people. So I think a critical element of weak ties too is like, yeah, these people aren't your best friends or your parents. And so it's maybe not appropriate to ask them for everything that you could possibly ever want. And
They
you want to
shouldn't
be
help
really
you move.
intentional. They shouldn't help you move. They shouldn't be carrying your couch in the 90-degree June day from your 2-story walk up to, for sure. So I think that being really intentional about, okay, what is this person uniquely positioned to, be able to support me with? And how can I define that in a really, really clear way, telling them why I want to connect with them or why I want to learn from them, and then how they can help me. And I think that that is a really important piece of the puzzle. And it's something that like not a lot of people learn really fully, I think or that no one teaches you. I don't think this is something I really had to learn from other people too, is like to be able to define those things and to really ask for what you need and ask for help in a very clear way. Otherwise people don't know how to support you. And so I think those are like 3 critical elements to forming weak ties. And then you mentioned really maintaining them and fostering them, investing in them over time. I think the most critical element in that equation, in that part of the equation, is the contributing to the commons and being really generous and seeking out how you can help people, how you can support people. If there's someone in your network that is looking for a new job or is moving to a new city, and asking them, how you can help them, offering someone in your network that you think would be willing to connect with them that maybe lives there, or anything along those lines. I think just being more intentional and active about doing that before people necessarily ask for it, even though it doesn't feel as maybe direct in terms of like fostering a relationship. It's something that is, or maybe direct is the wrong word, but like as natural or as something that comes up outside in your just like normal realm of consciousness. It's something you have to really make an effort for and really bring to top of mind more actively and like look for and search for. But I think that what that does is, again, it's creating a reciprocal cycle in which people want to support you and want to help you, and you can offer the things that you are an expert in or that you can bring to the table, which feels good and is good just in and of itself. But then also, like we mentioned earlier, it brings you to top of mind in certain areas and in certain instances. It helps establish like, this is what I can go to Devin for, that I know that this is something that she's well connected in or experienced in and can speak to. And I think that establishes your own kind of brand and credibility. It makes it more clear what you can support people with, and it makes it easier to make an ask and to ask for support, and to kind of go to your weak ties when you're on the other side of that, and brings you top of mind when someone just, then it is maybe giving that more active action towards you. If there's, an opportunity that arises that is within their network or their awareness that you wouldn't normally have seen or had any awareness of yourself, for that person to be able to think of you and think, oh, this really reminds me of Devin and something that she's interested in and something that, I know that I've spoken with her about before, like that's huge. And that gives you access to a whole new realm of opportunities and information that you wouldn't normally have. So I think that being really open with your network and your resources, contributing to the commons, is what I would say is the most valuable investment in really fostering weak ties.
Yeah, I really like that. It kind of gives me this idea of a little bit more of like an economics principle of like this surplus mindset of I have these places where I can give a lot, and there's a little bit of this transactional, like what can I do for you, what can you do for me? But because we're building up these weak ties, because we're pouring into these relationships, even if they're not best friendships, as their professional relationships, it's like I actually do have a lot that I can bring to the table here. And as I'm doing that and making your life better, there are unrelated things that you can bring to the table that make my life better. And as we've done that a little bit, it's like, wait, I actually really appreciate how you work. I really appreciate how you show up. And that feels like where a lot of extra benefits come out, and we're helping each other a lot more than just one simple transaction.
Totally. I love that. And I think it plays into just like an abundance mindset in general, which I think is hugely important both in life and in relationships, is knowing that there you do have an excess amount of resources and knowledge and things to offer, and contributing that to kind of this like commons or shared goal is going to be mutually and reciprocally beneficial to the people in your life and the people in your network. And I think part of just like gaining confidence too in general is owning your own knowledge, your own abilities to contribute to people. I think like it's so easy for a lot of us to maybe trace things in our lives, things we've learned, opportunities and accomplishments that we've had to the way that people have supported us and the way that those things have been enabled by other people. And that's incredibly important. And I think an equally important part of that equation is like, you've done that for other people. You probably just don't know. Like you are the person who's gotten someone somewhere. You're the person, and even if it's not A to Z, it's maybe A to C, or, trying to think of letters.
A to another letter. Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever part of the journey you're a part of, it may not be beginning to end, but you're getting someone from one point to another in so many instances, or offering something that allows them to have a breakthrough or an insight or a learning. And I think being able to know that and really own that is a really important part of knowing what you have to offer, and having confidence in that. And that leads to confidence in when you need to make an ask as well. And knowing that part of that is, just being willing to ask for help, which isn't always something that comes naturally to me or maybe other people as well. But I think that
Other people as well,
that abundance. Kevin. Okay, good. I'm glad I'm not alone.
Yeah, you're not alone in that.
Yeah. And yeah, that abundance mindset and confidence that comes from what you're describing, Jesse, is, I think, a really important part of fostering that for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of that like pay it forward, right? Somebody else helped me on my journey. I get to help somebody else on their journey. And a lot of the time, I really like what you mentioned. Like sometimes you don't even know who you've helped, but just by showing up regularly, and you never know when it is that you like say that one thing that, you can obviously remember when, oh, that advice was really foundational, but you never know when you're giving that advice or giving that feedback that really helps out.
Yeah,
exactly.
It can be really powerful to notice that and to call that out when other people do it for you. That like, because like you're saying, we notice the people that help us a lot, and we don't notice when we help other people. I think it's really powerful when someone comes back later and they're like, hey, what you said or the introduction that you gave to me to meet this other person was really valuable, and I really appreciate that. And just a simple message like that is very happy, makes everyone enjoys those interactions, but also like sets you up well in that relationship to be able to follow up and be able to be memorable and be able to stand out as again someone that's easy to help, someone that's wants to be helpful, and someone that like is a positive interaction.
100%. I love that.
Yes. So Devin, we're kind of teetering on this topic already, a little bit of this idea of unreasonable hospitality. And that's something that I know is something that you care about a lot, something that you have thought a lot about and live out very much. Can you talk a little bit about what unreasonable hospitality means to you?
I would love to. My coworkers are going to laugh at this because I talk about it so much, and they're like, please shut up about this in the most nice way possible.
We're giving her a mic. You're welcome, everyone.
I know. You're going to regret asking me this question. I promise you. Yes. Okay. So I'll give some background. Unreasonable hospitality is a concept completely credited and written about by this amazing restaurateur named Will Guidara. Will Guidara is not only the author of a book under that name, Unreasonable Hospitality, which I read and absolutely became obsessed with, but also one of the most iconic restaurateurs in New York, my current city as well, and just an industry that I'm really fascinated in. I find the food scene and the culinary scene and the hospitality scene incredibly fascinating and interesting, and one of my own personal hobbies. So I was really intrigued by the book because it was about that world, but also a business book and a leadership book, and one of the best I've read. And even though it might not be as clear or intuitive just from the description of how it might apply, to just the general business world, I actually found it the most relevant book that I've read to my own work and to, I think, just business and leadership in general. But anyway, so Will Guidara is the also former co-owner of 11 Madison Park, which has been ranked the #1 world's best restaurant multiple times and has 3 Michelin stars now. And unreasonable hospitality, the term in the book, is about how he and the chef of 11 Madison Park, Daniel Hum, essentially took it from where it was before it had Michelin stars, before it had that prestige, and really elevating it to this world-renowned restaurant that it is today, and how this idea of unreasonable hospitality was the catalyst and core for all of that. And the background that they give is that it was actually originally a phrase that was used kind of to shut them down and to tell them that they were being unreasonable in a negative sense. Unreasonable hospitality, it's all about, and the way that they talk about it in the book, particularly applied to 11 Madison Park, is these incredible acts of hospitality and personal touches that they would incorporate into the dining experience of the restaurant, and how in just unbelievable ways it made it incredibly emotional and personal and compelling and just really incredible experience for every person that dined with them. And that can be ways that seem extremely extravagant or expensive and completely out of the realm of normal expectations or reason. And so people would tell them that they were being unreasonable, that this was crazy, it was never going to work. And so they decided to take that term essentially and flip it into this core philosophy and this, positive kind of like beacon of and North Star of everything that they were working towards. So with that background, the way that Will defines it, and the way that's, I think, most applicable to a broader business environment, is that really what unreasonable hospitality is the choice to put hospitality and people at the center of every decision that you're making, and to really be, as he says, as creative and unreasonable and intentional in pursuit of relationships and people as you are in pursuit of the product. And so I think that that's really how you apply it in the broader sense in just that definition. And there's some really more specific examples I can dig into if that's of interest. But that's unreasonable hospitality, and everyone should read the book as well.
I love it. I love it.
It's on my list now, yeah.
If that pitch wasn't enough for you.
Yes. Yeah. I love it. Okay,
and so on my restaurant list now. Quick interruption to the show. Giveaway alert. Text us at 503-893-2664. Either your name, proof of subscription, send us a screenshot of you subscribed on Spotify, YouTube, any other podcast media platform, or better yet, a guest idea, topic, podcast episode idea, and we will give away to one lucky subscriber a copy of the book Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara.
Okay, so this idea of like putting people at the center of everything, that obviously Will Guidara comes from the restaurant world. You are not currently working in the restaurant world, right? You work in community, you work at, for Morning Brew. How do you take this idea of putting people at the center of everything and take it outside of that setting and put it in the Morning Brew learning world where you're working in communities?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think one that really is, again, at the center of so much of what we do. I think that a lot of building community is really around relationships and shared experiences. And that is one way that you put people at the center of the decisions that you're making, is thinking about how can I best facilitate relationships and shared experiences and authentic human connection in a world in which we're all working towards a shared goal that's potentially, more directly business related or tangible. So when it comes to Morning Brew Learning and our programs that we do, the way that we facilitate that is by, I think, really creating a product that is educational, of course. That's at the core of everything we do, is focused on, like you mentioned in the intro, really creating very specific skills that we are helping people learn and have going forward. It's, giving education in these more holistic and broader topics around essentials of business and leadership and analytics. But along the way, and how we do that is by not only learning from the content, learning from experts, learning from the best, but learning from each other and facilitating community in a way in which it puts human connection at the center of that experience. So all of our programs are cohort based, and they have a really deep focus on community. And one of the ways, and some of the ways that we kind of think about that and facilitate that is, I think first, keeping everything really human. So we as community managers are doing everything like as manually as possible. Of course, we don't want to be foolish in the way that we're using things like resources and being wasteful in that sense. But we, only use automation when it's something, for example, that is like a really simple task that we want to make efficient. When it comes to speaking to members in our community, the onboarding, offboarding process, connecting them to each other, facilitating coffee chats, having discussions, everything we do ourselves and we do manually, and we like really pour kind of like work on being really present in those moments and being able to bring our authentic selves to those environments and those contexts, and then hoping that that allows other people to really do the same and to feel willing to bring their authentic selves to the group. And so I think by incorporating community elements that are really human forward into all of our programs, not only in the way that we're facilitating, but in the way that we work to create like a peer-to-peer environment. So another example, instead of having one expert that we're learning from, or just having this like source of truth and knowledge that is like a one-to-many model, as again, like Kyle has put it this way in the past, instead of one-to-many, we're focused on being many-to-many. So part of the experience is learning from each other, from being able to apply ideas from, again, we're going back to weak ties, full circle moment, outside of your normal context and your normal realm of information and people, is being able to have access to all these people in this program where they're coming from different roles, different backgrounds, different industries, different companies, different parts of the country, and being able to understand how you can apply the same knowledge that you're all learning together in a different way by learning how it's, applied to other industries other than your own, interpreted by different people and different minds. They're going to glean different information from content and from educational experiences than you probably would. And so learning from each other as well. So I think that those are some of the ways that we are focused on being really human and really community forward, and being able to incorporate humanity and relationships in the center of a lot of our work and what we do. I think there are other ways too that are applicable outside of maybe like work like mine, which is really more directly focused on relationship building. I think that I have a unique job, which I absolutely love, that does allow me to think a lot about how to foster connection between people, how to kind of like serve people as best as I can. In a way, it's, similar to the hospitality industry in that way, or customer service. Mm-hmm. But there are other ways, I think, that are less directly applicable, that you can kind of take this idea and run with it in other businesses and industries. So, for example, one of the things that the book talks about, and the core of this philosophy and the way, and a more tangible way to really implement it, is this idea of the rule of 95-5. And this is like much more directly, I think, business minded and tactical. And it's like, you take 95% of your budget and how you're thinking about your financial model and everything that you're spending money on as a company, and you are hyper specific, hyper vigilant about every expense and everything that is coming into your P&L, whatever it may be, and really being very frugal and being very wise about every single decision that you're making in that sense. And then taking 5% of your resources and being buck wild crazy with how you're spending it, and using it though in a very intentional way of like, how can I use that 5% to do either some innovative idea that we've been thinking about, or something that's really going to like surprise and delight our customers or the people that we're serving in a way that they would never expect. And so I think that that's one way and one application financially that can be applied to any industry. It's like with 95% of what you're doing, you can be very reasonable and very tactical and very resourceful, but then take like 5% of a reserve to really like go blow it out of the water, and think about how you can specifically, as a company, as an employee or whatever, individual contributor, manager, whatever you may be, to really kind of like focus that time and that money, that resource, whatever that 5% may be, on how you can really serve people in an unreasonable way.
I love that. How fun. Like, what a fun idea to be able to like do that. I think one of the things, so I know that you work in community, right? You are a community manager, and so you work like very much in this world. One thing that I was talking about recently with a coworker is that all employees are customer facing for pretty much every company. That like there are settings where almost everyone is interacting with customers, interacting, and if you're not interacting with customers, you sure are interacting with other employees. And that like there always are these opportunities to stay human centered and to stay human focused. That I think we we get really weird when we're in like a business setting and we start writing emails with words that we would never use in real life, and like we start doing all these things that like we're supposed to do to be professional, and I think it like takes some of the humanity out of it. And I really appreciate the way that you're talking about it, and the way that I mean I've seen the Morning Brew learning team live it out also, that like it is very it is human focused, it is human centric, and in ways that that my friends are, where my coworkers are not, right? And not to slam my coworkers, right? But I think there's just a different context, and I think people are using stimulus control to act differently in ways that kind of operate some of the humanity out of it. And it's a great reminder to bring that humanity back in, that we all are big people beyond beyond what we do for our job description in a 9 to 5.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. And I think
I
yeah, no, go for it, Jesse.
Oh, I just laugh. You talking about, we're so manual, doing as many things, as much like as high percentage of the things ourselves rather than automating. I in my college search, so several years back at this point, but remember getting a text to my phone number. Oh my gosh, they know who I am, saying, "Hey, quote, all caps, first name, and then no end quote, comma, and then like a personalized message." But it was jarring, right? It was funny.
Yeah.
It didn't really affect me too much, but it's like, oh, that compared to getting like an actual phone call from somebody who uses your name and is very intentional about it is such a different experience. And
Yeah.
it really does. It dazzles. It's surprising and delightful, like you said. I love the use of that word. And yeah, it really does make a difference. And I work in personal finance, private wealth management, and we have a lot of those same ideas of, we're not sending out mass emails except for when it's like mandated by the SEC or something. But like we are trying to have like personal touches with clients because we care, and it matters in a different way than maybe working in college admissions, where it's like we have 40,000 prospects and 20 people trying to reach all of them, right?
Totally. You don't want to
So,
automate the humanity out of it. I think that's a great point. And
mm,
of course, at scale, it depends what you're able to do. And I think at that point, then it depends, or it's really a matter of expectation setting in the right way. But one of the things they talk about doing at 11 Madison Park that I think is so fascinating is that they would memorize the entire set of reservations they had for that night and look up, research what the people that were dining with them looked like, so that
hmm,
you could walk in, and the minute that you walk through that door, without saying anything, they're like, "Jesse and Joel, great to see you. We have your table ready for your reservation." Like without
that's
a
cool.
single
Wow.
moment of effort or thought. And like that type of thing. It's like, it's absolutely wild. You imagine walking into a restaurant and having that happen. And that's something that would stick with me for such a long time. And
Mm-hmm.
that would absolutely surprise and delight me. And so I think of, there are ways that you can think of applying those things into what you do in all sorts of different ways, and it doesn't have to be specific to hospitality. And um, I think that one of the things that you all were mentioning earlier too is like just being present to people is so important. Like being where people are, meeting them where they are is a really important part of being hospitable and being responsive and being human forward. And I think one of the ways you can really do that, and one of the best gifts that you can give customers or fellow team members or whatever it may be, is listening. And I think that's a hugely powerful thing. And going back to some of the things that we do on my team, is that we take feedback incredibly seriously and value it really, really highly. So we have surveys throughout all of our courses and programs. And we read and respond to every single one, like incredibly thoughtfully. We like read through it all and then like specifically respond to that person in response to what they said in the survey. And I can't tell you the amount of times that people like who put a lot of thought and time and intention into that survey response, clearly because they wrote out sometimes paragraphs, and the amount that they are surprised and the frequency with which people are surprised that I read it is mind-blowing. And it's like that's kind of sad to think about, that like people would put time and effort into that, spend their time and energy to offer feedback, and feedback is such a gift. And then as a society, we've just come to assume that that isn't going to go anywhere. It's just in a black hole, but we're still willing to do it because sometimes we need space to vet. And just being able to simply do that small act of reading and responding to it not only is incredibly impactful to that person, but it makes us 10 times better at our work, at our jobs, at what we're doing. And it helps us to really put the people that are a part of our experience in that particular moment at the center of what we're doing, because it's not just about iterating over a long period of time. It's about also iterating people's experiences in whatever product you're providing. Think in micro interactions and in that real time moment, because you do have the opportunity to make a difference in that way, as well as, you know, in a long-term iteration of a product or a program or whatever you may be working on. And so it's a gift to us and it's a gift to those people. And so I think that like that is one human forward example of how to really make people at the center of what you're doing and to impact their experience with you or your company. And yeah, feedback is such a gift in that way. And just listening to people is a very human act. And it's something that, you know, doesn't always come easily, and that people don't always experience really as frequently as you would like to think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I really like the imagery there of there is some sort of automation probably of like sending out a survey. I feel like most companies I work with send out a survey, and half the time I'll fill it out, half the time I won't. But then still having a human-centered approach around that. So not just saying, okay, we built a system out for it, set it and forget it, but saying like we built a system around it um, to then expand upon that and then to actually get the value out of it, where so many places like, I think we're supposed to send out a survey, set up a survey, spend 20 minutes figuring it out, send, maybe aggregate some data, maybe not. But instead saying like, okay, we really value this and we can really become better for this and leave a better lasting impression on the other side is a really cool example. I've never really heard of anyone especially using like surveys to do that. Yeah, really like that.
Yeah, I love that point too, because it actually is so incredibly important that you build the process into the infrastructure of what you're doing too. It's like you can't just expect to randomly remember as you're building something to be like, oh, we should survey these people or whatever it may be. In that sense, I think that like you do need to build these things into your processes, into your systems in a very operational way, and those things can involve more, you know, automation and more things that are maybe on a less manual, less energy intensive or high touch level, but allow for that interaction to then be facilitated, then to be top of mind, then to be built into the timelines and processes of the work you're doing and what you're building. So it's a great point, great call out.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I want to shift gears a little bit, and I want to talk about friendship as adults. That making friends is very easy as a kid. It really is just whoever's around you, you're willing to be friends with. And then through high school and then through college, like you have a lot of opportunities for friendship built into your life, built into the systems that you live in, the worlds that you operate in, whether that's living in a dorm room or going to class with the same 30 people 5 days a week for, you know, a semester or whatever.
Or years,
Yeah, or years, right? And then you see the same people the next semester and all of that, and you kind of get assigned to work in these group projects, and you get assigned to go spend a bunch of time with the same people consistently. And then you graduate college and all of that stops. And some companies are better at facilitating things like coffee chats and community than other companies are. But outside of companies, there's not the same systems built into our lives to kind of
Mm.
facilitate that. Um, so, Devin, I would like to talk to you about, in this world that is more ambiguous, where we have more freedom, we have more flexibility, and with that, we have the freedom and the flexibility not to make any friends. How do you kind of function in that space, and how do you set yourself up well to find opportunities to plug into community and then actually do it in a way that makes meaningful relationships?
Such a great question, and one that I think every one of us asks ourselves is, how do you make friends as an adult? And I think the key to it, a lot of the heart of that question lies within exactly what you were just saying, is like, take the college example. What are the things that college builds into that makes it so easy to make friends and to have opportunities to connect with people? It's really three things: shared experience, shared interests, and facilitation. And I think that those are the three things that allow you to make friendships as an adult. But it's figuring out how to apply that, like you said, in a world without as much structure and as much clarity, and that being as top of mind and in front of you and facilitated for you. So a lot of it is figuring out how to do those things in this world post college and post school and facilitation and childhood. So like, let's talk about each of them. I think shared experience, that's huge. Like, nothing really forms bonds more quickly, I believe, than shared experience. And that's one of the things that we incorporate into our programs, as you hopefully experienced, is
Yes.
we believe that, going through a 7 to 8 week long course with a group of people gives you a shared language and shared kind of, like, that's an intense thing to do. And it's not everyone that decides to spend that long contributing and investing and pouring into further education, their own professional development, learning something new. And so, first, the self-selection of people who are willing to do that, that's like a shared interest. But then the shared experience of actually doing that over a course of time gives you, inside jokes. It gives you language and things that you can, like, connect over, that you experience together and that you can relate on, that I think is incredibly powerful. Another example of that is like moving to a new place. This is something I experienced moving to New York. I grew up my entire life in California, and lived a few places across California, but that's where my primary social circles were. And I found that, I moved to Santa Barbara after college for my first job, and actually found it, even though that was, the place where I was comfortable, where I had a lot of connections because I was still in the same state that I grew up in. I found it really hard to break into that kind of like community and world, because not a lot of people had moved there. I didn't find a whole lot of people that were like young professionals that were kind of new to the city. It was like all people who had kind of been there, or a lot of people who had been there during college, and they had already their shared experience and shared language that I couldn't necessarily relate to. And so when I moved to New York, one thing that I found that was unique to my experience here, and that is one of my favorite things about New York, is that pretty much everyone here has been new at some point. They know what it's like to move to New York. Again, it's a little bit self-selective. It takes kind of like a certain kind of interest to kind of opt into what the city lifestyle is. And then it also creates a shared experience. It's a hard place to live, and there are a lot of barriers to entry when you come to New York. But everyone here has had that experience. They've been new. Pretty much everyone. It's pretty few and far between the people that you meet here that have grown up here. And so I found that when I came here, I found people who were incredibly open to including me, to helping me, to supporting me, to connecting with me. It's one of the things that I think is really beautiful about the culture here, is just people's willingness and openness to connect with people and to meet new people and to learn just from each other in that way, and to have new friendships and new connections, even if that doesn't fit into your, small social circle or close group of friends. So all that's to say, shared experience, I think, hugely important and incredibly powerful. Shared interests, a way that you can tap into that is like, one of my favorite things is niche communities. I think that like niche communities are so interesting, and that is like the heart of shared interest. It's like a specific thing that you can relate and talk about and bond over. And so whether that's like, lately I've been hearing a lot about bird watching groups. I don't know what it is. It's like young people that are in bird watching groups. And so that is like a very niche community example.
Yeah.
Maybe it's pickleball, you know, like we talked about, that is a very specific interest, and you can join a pickleball league. I joined a beach volleyball league for the first time in my life. Grew up in California, but moved to New York and apparently decided I was going to do beach volleyball. And that's like a niche thing and random thing. And so I think finding those communities and groups that you can tap into, hugely helpful in that sense. And then the last thing I mentioned was facilitation. When you're in college, like everything is facilitated for you, and even more so in childhood. And activities are set up for you. All you have to do is show up. That's hard enough in and of itself sometimes, but it's even harder to be the one who facilitates and to be a catalyst. But I think doing that is really, really powerful as well. Being someone who kind of like creates that space for other people, you know, you might have to be the person that does that. And I think that gives people room to, you know, have that kind of facilitated interaction that you wouldn't necessarily get otherwise in adulthood. So this is like a very kind of silly and random example, but one thing that I did within the first year that I moved here was implement this idea of what I called Winter Tuesdays. And it was just like a super casual thing in which I was like, winter, everyone coops up into their homes. It's cold. You don't really want to go anywhere. And it's like the time that's much easier to be isolated and just kind of like harder to make friends and meet new people. But I was like, I'm still new to the city. I like live alone. I want my fair share of interaction. So on every Tuesday throughout winter, throughout like a 3-month period, I just would do like completely random and casual things. So we would go to bar trivia or go to just like a random brewery and like play games or whatever it may have been. It was super open invite. Anyone can come. You don't have to tell me if you're not coming. You don't have to feel pressure to come. You can just show up if you want to show up. You can invite whoever you want to invite. You can bring whoever you want to bring. And I just was intentional about being really consistent about it. So the space was there for whoever wanted it when they wanted to show up without any pressure. And then what ended up happening was like I did like 2 or 3, and then after that every single week someone else wanted to plan and host it. So then like someone had it at their apartment, and then someone wanted to host one like at a bar by where they lived. And so like then you're getting people who are excited to create that space for other people, and then their friends come, and all of a sudden I was meeting people that I had never met before and that were not a part of my network at all, because they were invited by their friend who was hosting. And so it was just like it's super simple, but it was really fruitful.
Holy shit, it's
and
weak
I met
ties
a lot
again.
of friends.
It's weak ties again.
It all comes back to weak ties. Yeah, totally. And so I think it's like sometimes you need to create the space, and other people will follow because, you know, it's not as easy to have that facilitated space. So yeah, shared experience, shared interests, facilitation, the things that we've learned from maybe college or other areas of life, I think that we can apply to making friendships as adults.
I love it. I want to ask a quick question about Winter Tuesdays. Is that like, did you just have like a group chat that you like send out a text every like Monday, and you're like, tomorrow I'm going here? Like how logistically, how'd you do that?
I love it. No, this is actually an important distinction. I'm so glad you asked that, because I think an important part of it was like, there's definitely a lot of power in texting someone and inviting them to something. And I would do that initially with the first time I invited them. But then I would be like, hey, do you want to just like stay in the loop of when this is happening? And basically I had a recurring calendar invite that I would add people to Google Calendar. We love it. I love a Google Calendar invite. And then it would just be on their calendars, and I would update the event each week. So then you can just see it and you can choose if you want to come. And then it also like frees people from being like making some excuse. And it's like, you want to stay at home and watch Survivor, and I 100% respect that, and you don't need to tell me. And so I think that was part of like the freedom of it and the casual nature of it. And so that was kind of a fun and critical part of it, as well as like, you know, distributing the information in a way that was low pressure, super casual, and that other people could like add their friends, you know, like to the calendar invite as well. So it was like super low friction.
Oh, I love that. That's way better than a big group chat.
Yeah, because the group chats are so stressful. And so I love that. It's like, you can say yes, you can say no, you can say maybe. You just have all the information right there. You don't have to scroll up through a bunch of things. Wow.
Plus, I'm in like a couple of giant group chats like that, which no shade to those group chats. I appreciate that I'm in them. But it's the sort of thing where like it's the every like Wednesday we get a text and it's like, here's the plan for tomorrow. And then I get like a dozen texts from people that I don't know who are declining. I'm like, I don't need all these notifications. And like, and then, I mean, obviously you can mute the chat, but then, you know, it's easier
don't get the plan
to have
for tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's easier to have like I like the Google Calendar invite strategy for that. Yeah.
We don't need to know that 962327889.
I don't care if you're coming or not, honestly.
Yes. And then it becomes overwhelming. So yeah, I think that is like it's silly, but it's so important. It's like creating low pressure, low friction environments and spaces in which people don't feel overstimulated and overwhelmed. It's valuable.
That's awesome. What a great, that's I'm taking notes over here, you know.
It's a franchise model. I actually took inspiration from friends of mine that did something similar back when they lived in New York, and so I encourage other people to adopt their own versions.
Phenomenal.
Yes. And then tell me your stories.
I love it. I love it. The franchise model of Winter Tuesdays. It'll live on.
Yes.
I might go Winter Wednesdays, get some alliteration going.
See, that would have been smart. Though I did have work events typically on Wednesday evenings, so that and part of my whole theory, which this is a whole nother conversation that we don't need to get into, but I truly believe that Tuesdays are objectively the worst day of the week. And so I was like actively trying to make them better in my own small way, contribution to society. So that was the heart of it. But I am a huge fan of alliteration. So I think I need like a summer Sundays or like something to make up for that.
I like it. Yeah. Also, I think a lot of people think Tuesdays are the worst day of the week.
It's pretty much inarguable, we can agree on
that.
Yeah,
because like Monday, you still have a bit of the Monday, you still got a bit of the juice from the weekend, and like by Wednesday, you're like
slate.
Yeah, and by Wednesday, you're like, I've made it. I had a professor who always said like, Wednesdays, I've woken up for the third time this week, so it's all good. Like I've done more than half, even if I haven't gone to any classes or haven't gone to work yet or whatever. And then like Thursdays pre-weekend, Fridays weekend, you know, all the things.
Yeah.
But
y'all are literally reading my mind. This is my exact argument. Is that Monday weekend energy still, and everyone gives you grace because we're all like it's Monday. I feel like people are always like Monday's the worst, but it's like the expectations on Monday are so low. It's Tuesday where you haven't quite got there. Yes. Okay. I'm so glad we're all
now. We have to be careful not to let word get out too much, or else Monday will be like, you should still be energized. It's the weekend. So we got to keep it where the expectations stay low on a Monday. But
yes, this is an underground take.
Yes, absolutely. I had a couple thoughts on your points a little bit ago. You mentioned bird watching is a big thing. Everyone I know goes bird watching all of a sudden, and I'm like,
what is this?
Yeah, I keep hearing about that too.
Yeah, just walking along and somebody's like, it's a blue crested heron finch or something. I don't go bird watching, but I see a lot of birds. I see a lot of the trail of a bird pointed out to me. But I did hear a comedian say like, so like, yeah, people ask me, how did I get into bird watching? I turned 30 and that's that. So maybe that's contributing. I don't know. And then the other thing I hear about all the time in kind of this, like, how do you make friends? It's like a bunch of people are talking about Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So I'm curious if that, I don't know. That's something I've been hearing.
Funny that you bring that up, Jesse. I wouldn't normally have any reason to relate to that, except that like my family is actually super into Brazilian jiu-jitsu. My dad and my brother both do it. Yeah, my dad is a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. My brother did it for years and did wrestling as well. And so they are like very plugged into that community. And so I'm well aware of it and know that it's like incredibly like familial and super like there are like lots of deep relationships and friendships that I've seen from that community. So yeah, that is one that I can attest to in that sense. And then also like on my block that I live on in New York, there are like 3 jujitsu studios. And I'm like, what? This feels so specific. I wouldn't have normally even like thought about jujitsu if I didn't have the direct personal experience. But here we are surrounded by it. And I have zero interest in personally participating. Highly commend everyone that is able to do that. But yes, no, totally. That's another great example, and one that I think is also having a moment. Maybe Mark Zuckerberg is also contributing to that.
Maybe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
We're all
and
getting targeted ads.
So I studied abroad in Costa Rica
Okay.
the beginning of my senior year, and like you mentioned, like a block down from my house in a random neighborhood was a jiu-jitsu studio. So maybe
Yeah.
it's a worldwide thing too. I don't know.
They're popping up
Okay, so
everywhere.
I did, yeah, I had a little bit of a follow-up question. You gave us a little bit of a roadmap for like how to do this, like make a Google Calendar invite, text some people, a good formula. But that still can be pretty hard to like put yourself out there. I'm going off script. This isn't something you had time to prepare for.
I love it.
But that can be a little bit of like I don't know, maybe that feels like somebody else's job. Like this person's super outgoing. This person, I mean, like personally, I always look at like Joel's really good at this kind of thing. He's really good at just like showing up and doing the thing. And it's always something that I'm a little bit more hesitant about. I want to plan it out more. I want to have all the details beforehand. And often that ends up with like, oh, I was going to do that. I was going to do this, even if it's not the facilitating, even if it's just showing up to a game night, a game night at a game store. So like, what are some of the ways we can think about pulling the trigger, so to speak?
I love this question. And I, first of all, agree with you and relate fully. I think it's incredibly intimidating to do it. And it was fully out of my comfort zone, to be honest, to do that, even though it was like super small and casual. And it's scary to like put yourself out there and also like open yourself up to like something in which you're like actively kind of being like rejected in a certain sense, because of course, like, people are not going to be able to come, not going to want to come. And I think like keeping a few things in mind is important in those moments. Like one being that it's something where I think like making it a little bit less personal of like you're creating space. And, I think that like the willingness to show up to something or to create the space or whatever kind of like form that you're participating in. I think we're all so focused and maybe in our heads about how we're showing up in those spaces and how people are perceiving us. At least I can speak for myself in that sense. And I think one thing that I've been told and that it just helps me to remember is like people are always thinking about themselves in that sense and not us in that sense. And so I think like taking a step back and knowing like even if you're creating the space or you're showing up, like you're not defining, you don't need to, you can take the pressure off of yourself to like define that experience and to define the space itself. You can just like having your presence there is something that is a part of more of like a collective experience and a collective puzzle and picture, as opposed to you feeling like you need to drive it or define it or create it. And then the other thing I think I would note too is like I think that though that was out of my comfort zone, I would say more of an extroverted person, and so that does come a little bit more naturally to me in terms of just like feeling energized or feeling like excited about being in those environments or spending time with people. But I think that like one thing that I've talked to more people who consider themselves more introverts in my life is that one unique advantage of that is that you are often probably the best person to create a space because you're thinking less about, like I said, kind of facilitating and like being what everyone needs in that environment and creating space and like kind of like being at the forefront of that. And instead you're typically like focused on creating space in which other people feel comfortable and other people feel like they can interact in a way that's like beneficial to and like suited to them. And that may not be like super outgoing or like, going to a networking event and asking like small talk questions and like having to like completely put yourself out there in that way. Like, I think that people who maybe are less inclined to be a catalyst are actually the most well suited and have this unique advantage of like knowing how to create the environment and create the room for people instead of needing to lead it. And so I think like tapping into that advantage and that like I think really beautiful gift is one way that you can like really, you know, have more confidence in your contribution to kind of like and what you have to offer in creating a space and doing that. And then I think like just by nature everything is easier said than done, and it's just like being willing to say yes and getting out of your comfort zone is huge. That's one of the things when I moved that I like committed myself to doing, and that people that I trust very much gave me the advice of is like say yes to everything, even if you don't want to go and it's super random and you're not interested. Like just try. I think for like give yourself a window. For me, like the first few months that I moved, I wanted to do that. Like if you're in a space where you are trying to really actively make friends and form new relationships, that's going to be more important than maybe when you feel more established and you feel like, oh, I've kind of gotten to the point where I can have some freedom to take a step back. And like, if I don't feel like going to that game night, like I can pass and all will be well, which it will be regardless. But like, I think kind of committing to it, giving yourself a critical period of time. So like I moved somewhere new or I started a new job or, whatever it may look like, being like for the first 3 months or however long it is, like I'm going to just say yes to as much as I possibly can. And even if it makes me uncomfortable, even if I don't want to go, I'm going to do it. And knowing that that's going to like pay off in the long term. And then later down the line, you can maybe, you know, be more selective.
Man, I love that. I love that you're like capping it off with that. A few episodes ago, Jesse and I had a conversation about the framework of either saying hell no or yes versus your framework being like hell yeah or no. And I think it's really like there are situations where those are both applicable. But I think like moving to a new city, like taking the mindset and taking the framework of like, if my answer is not hell no, like I should just say yes, like I should go and do it. And taking that mindset for a couple of months until you're settled, until you feel like, no, I have some friends, I have some community here to plug into. And then you're able to be more selective. You're able to change it up a little bit. I love that. I think that's a great piece of advice there, Devin.
Totally. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Very cool. Well, I want to be respectful of time, and I really do appreciate you taking the last hour out of your day to come in and talk on this podcast, because you don't have to do that.
And it's a Tuesday.
And it's a Tuesday,
and,
yeah.
And this made my Tuesday all the better. Not anywhere
so
else I'd rather spend the hour.
Well, thank you. This has been the highlight of my Tuesday also. Thank you for taking the time. This has been wonderful. Before we close, I have 2 quick questions for you. One is, where can people find more of you? And 2 is, do you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to share?
Oh, lovely. Yes, where can people find more of what I'm doing? You are welcome. I welcome all LinkedIn connections. You know, if you want a new week tie, hit me up. And I believe y'all will link that, but you can just find me at Devin Barbin at Twitter or on Twitter as well, though I don't use it nearly as much as I used to in these days, but Twitter or LinkedIn. And then do look up our programs at learning.morningbrew.com. I would be remiss not to plug that. We're facilitating lots of shared experiences over shared interests. And I think it's a great opportunity to learn and to form relationships along the way. Closing thoughts. I just really appreciate being here. I love what you all are doing. I think that like one of the things that you mentioned we might talk about, which I think I'll end on this, is like I love the idea of this podcast of, you know, becoming yourselves and focusing on how to kind of like be a better version of yourself. And I think that like my final thoughts is that really like that should always be holistic. And I love how you're thinking about that in terms of like, how can we be healthy, wealthy, and wise? And like, I think that when you think about whether it's what we're doing, you know, at Learning at Morning Brew and like our courses and focused on professional development, or it's investing in your relationships and we're talking about how to make friendships and how to have a socially enriching life, or whatever it may be, like think always keeping that balanced and having everything in you know, in portions that are somewhat equal to each other. So focusing on like, how can you be better? How can you grow into yourself, both like socially and mentally and emotionally and physically, and just like keeping all those things in balance and taking care of yourself, I think is the advice that I would leave people with, is like, oftentimes, we focus so much on one of those categories and one of those things that's most relevant and important and feels the most urgent to us in any given time or context of our lives. But it's so important to zoom out and to give a holistic evaluation of those things, and to really think about, like, sometimes the areas of our life in which we're neglecting to take care of ourselves the most are the areas that we need the most enrichment and investment in. So I think zoom out, and when you're thinking about becoming yourself and investing in a better version of yourself, like, what are the areas that you are maybe neglecting more than others, and having a holistic just evaluation of those things, I think, is something I've been thinking about recently, and that I would encourage people to do.
I love that.
Amazing.
What a wonderful note to close on. Yes.
And thank you for having me. This was wonderful.
Yeah.
It was a great conversation. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, I'm happy that you came on. We'll have to do it again. We've got, I don't know, a bunch of questions that we didn't even get to, so we'll have to schedule a follow-up sometime in the future. But this has been really great, Devin, and thank you very much for coming on. We'll have all your links and even the learning.morningbrew links down in the comments, or the comments. We'll post it as a comment too in the description. Yes. Yeah, they'll be easily accessible for anyone interested. So thank you very much for coming on.
My
Devin.
Shameless plug. I appreciate it. Thank you, Joel and Jesse. This was a great conversation. I appreciate you both.
Thank you for tuning into this episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed putting it together. Jesse and I both enjoyed this conversation with Devin, and I've enjoyed editing it. But you can see I'm in my editing fit. Smokey the Bear, prevent wildfires. If you go camping, make sure that's important. Anyway, I wanted to remind you about our book giveaway. On this episode, we talked a lot about Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. And a reminder, we are giving away one copy of Will Guidara's Unreasonable Hospitality to a lucky subscriber. So text us at 503-893-2664. Text us your name for one entry. Text us proof of subscription to the show on any platform that you want. That'll be 2 entries. Text us feedback or an idea for a guest or a new topic that you want us to cover for 3 entries. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll have a new episode next Monday. Make sure to follow, like, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and give us a 5-star rating if you think we deserve it. If you don't think we deserve it, text us at 503-893-2664 and let us know why. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your evening and have a good one.